school, I'm going to show you how to make this gorgeous rose. Now, this was the very first flower that I've ever designed, and I have to tell you, it's probably the easiest. But nonetheless, it's stunning. And after we're finished making our rose, I'll show you how to make a bridal bouquet that looks something like this. For materials, I'm using a frosted paper called Coral, and that is a tex weight. Then for the leaves, I'm cutting it out of jelly bean green. And this is also tex weight, but it is not frosted. And you can use this in cardstock as well. I have an 18 gauge paper covered wire, 24 gauge paper covered wire, and then a ribbon that I'll wrap around the stem to match my flowers. I've printed out my patterns. For tools, I'm using a high temperature hot glue gun, needle nose pliers with a wire cutter, a heavy duty wire cutter, a curling tool, and some craft scissors. You can cut your petals and leaves by using the SVG cut file and cut them on your personal cutting machine, or there's also a PDF template and you can cut them by hand. For each rose, I have 3 of the small pieces and then 4 pieces that have multiple petals. I also have this sepal and a leaf, and then I've cut out a few extra leaves to show you how I'm going to attach this on a separate wire to integrate those into your bouquet. The first thing you're going to want to do is curl your petals. Now, you guys have probably seen me use the edge of my scissors to curl, but now I have a curling tool that was made for me by Fiskars, and I'm going to show you how to do that technique. So I'm starting with my small ones, and I'm curling the 2 corners, and you can see, I'll show you the full shape here. It sort of bulges on both sides. You'll want to curl each of the corners rather than just one straight because you'll get a better shape. So here's the correct way, and I'll show you the incorrect way. So if you just curl it straight, it's gonna look like this. And that's not quite as pretty. That's okay, because I'll just take this and recurl it. That's the beautiful thing about paper. You can recurl it and shape it. Once I curl it, I'm also going to use my fingers like this and just nudge the corners down a bit and create a point. I'll go ahead and do that for all of my petals. Once I have all of those curled, the next thing I'll do is take these multiple petal pieces and glue them into a cone. So I'll put just a line of glue right there on that tab. You can see each one has a tab, and you can see there's a point. I'll fold that over and make it into a cone. And I like to get these done and let them cool while I'm working on the inside pieces. So let's talk about hot glue guns. If you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you'll probably remember me saying that I only use a low temperature hot glue gun, and you know, I think I've changed my mind. So low temperature is my go-to when I work on crepe paper, but what I'm finding is that frosted paper, because it does have a bit of a finish on it, it doesn't hold as well, and I've just had so many difficulties getting things to stick that I've discovered this hot glue gun. This is a Sure Bonder, and it has a very fine point, and this is probably my favorite one I've found so far. So I reserve this one for when I'm working with frosted paper. I've learned how to use it so I don't burn myself. You can too. But for other crafts, I will go ahead and use my low temperature. Just so you know, sometimes it's good to have 2 different hot glue guns in your toolkit. So here they are, all 4 pieces, and you can see how the cone's very small, and then it starts to broaden as I get to the last piece here. These 2 are very similar. You can tell that this one is a bit more flat than this one, so you'll want this to go in last. I have here my 18 gauge floral wire, and the reason why I like this paper covered floral wire, there's a link for it below, is that I can finish a rose and not have to use floral tape. This is, if I keep it clean, this will do the trick, and it just saves a little bit of time, especially if I'm doing a bouquet where you don't see the stems quite as much. So it's just a time-saving thing, and it also looks really pretty. What I'm doing here is I'm bending my floral wire, I would say about 1/4 inch at the end. The reason, I want my glue to have a bit more to grab onto. So I'll take my first piece, and I'm actually going to flip it over so that my curls go upwards. Put a line of glue right along the edge, make sure you can see that, and place my floral wire right into that glue. And you can see the hole there is getting full of of glue, and that will help it stay on and not pop off. Once that's cool, I'm going to roll this paper. I'm making it a bit more snug at the bottom and roll this into a cone. I'm going to leave about a 1/2 inch flap right there. Put just a dot of glue inside and then close that up. I'll hold it till it cools, and then I'll curl it back the other direction. You can use your fingers to sort of nudge it, and this is what you want it to look like, something like this. For the second petal, I'll want the curls to go the other direction, so I'll place it so they curl down towards the table. I'm going to put about a triangle of glue, I don't know, maybe 1/2 inch size there, and then I'll place that about the same angle, so you can see the tips match each other, but I'll want this one to overlap. And I'm going to pinch it into place so it will get a little bit of a wrinkle. So I'm pinching it at the bottom. I want this to be as tight as possible. And the third, I'll do the same. I want about that much glue, and I'll overlap on one side. It is a little bit hot, so I have to be careful, and then pinch it again. And I'll hold that till it's cool. You'll see it's a little bit wrinkly, and that's okay because this will be covered up by the next set of petals. The most important thing is you'll want it to be reasonably tight at the base. The center of your rose should look something like this, and I promise you this is the hardest part of the rose, and the rest is simple and fun. So you'll start with your 3-petal cone piece, and you can see there's a hole in the bottom. You may not have a hole with every single one, and that's okay, you can just punch it through, but just slide your wire right through that hole towards the top, and right before I get it there, I'll put some glue onto the base of my center, slide it into place, and then I'll want to rotate it so that it's the most pleasing to my eye. I try not to overlap petals so they're right on top of each other, but you just kind of fiddle with it until it feels right to your eye. Then I'll add the 4 petals. This one does not have a hole in it, so I'll just poke my wire right through, slide it up, and then add some glue at the base. One thing you might want to consider is don't add glue onto the flap where you had glued it before, because oftentimes I find when you put hot glue on top of hot glue, it might loosen it. It will heat it up so that it loosens a bit. That's just sort of a rule of thumb. So you can see there's the 4 petals, and then we'll add the 5th, or the 5 petal that is, the first 5 petal. In this case, I'm just going to add glue to the base since it's open enough. Here's how that looks. And then the final set. And since you have 2 stacked on top of each other that are a 5 and a 5, you'll want to make sure that you rotate those petals so that they hit each other right between the first. And there's your rose. And that was pretty simple. So the last piece that I'll add to this is the sepal. It's really tiny, and that's why I love this fine point here. I'll add a line of glue and then overlap 2 of the little sepal pieces. You can curl those if you want to. You don't have to, but it's an option. You just kind of curl them out like this. There should be a little hole for your wire. Slide that into place and add just a dot of glue at the base. And that gives you a beautiful finish on the back of your rose. Since I'm using these roses in a bridal bouquet, I want to have the green leaves integrated throughout, and the easiest way for me to do that, to make sure it's even, is to add a leaf right to the base of the flower. I didn't do a score line on this leaf, so I'm just going to fold it in half, use my curling tool to give it just a bit of shape. Put some glue right on the base of that leaf. and then I'll place it behind. And this will give just a peek of the green leaf between each flower when I arrange that into a bouquet. So let's make one more. I've cut extra leaves for this bouquet as I'll want to use them behind the bouquet. Do the same thing, just fold them in half, and then we'll use the curling tool to shape. I have two different sizes. I have the large one for the center and then two small ones. And really, you can use any size. You can use two large, you can do it in 2s or 3s of any sizes. I always feel like having plenty of greenery in a bouquet is a good idea. I'm using my 24 gauge wire for this because I don't want quite the bulk, but you could also use your 18 gauge. I'll place a bead of glue right down the center, lay the wire into it, and while it's still cool, I'll take my second leaf and just sort of place it at an angle right there in that bed of glue. Then I'll turn it over, put some glue on the back of the third leaf, and place it going the other direction. So it looks something like this. And this is the way I add extra green into my bouquet. So I have 12 roses and a handful of extra leaves. I'm gonna pull out some of my roses and just start arranging them. The nice thing about working with these flowers on a wire is you can actually bend them. How do you want to do that? What I want to create here is a cone shape, kind of a half circle, and then we'll surround it with leaves. So as I'm adding in more flowers, I'll just spin my wire so that everything fits. And I'm looking at it from behind. You can see what I'm seeing back here. But oftentimes I'll want to turn it around and take a peek because I see a leaf I'd like to pull up here, and I want to rotate this flower here. I'm tucked between those two flowers. I'll do the same over here. I'll have a hold of it like this, and then I'll just turn it around and reposition and adjust. Again, I want some of these leaves to peek through, not too much. I don't want them to overpower the roses, but just to see enough of a little green smattering throughout the bouquet. So this looks pretty good to me. One of the things that you might want to keep in mind is don't crowd your flowers too much. Go ahead and feel free to bend them back and to use that wire so that they're not so tight that they press against each other, and you'll also get a bigger bouquet. So I'll show you from behind what it looks like. And everything looks pretty good. This is about where I want it as far as the flowers. I'll add these next, but I want to hold it in place. So you can either take a ribbon, a cord, something, and tie that around, or you can use floral tape. And I think I'll use the floral tape method. So for those of you who are not familiar with floral tape, it's actually a lot different than tape in that it's not really sticky. It's a paper that stretches like a crepe paper with wax on it. So in order to get it to work, you have to heat it up with your fingertips and then stretch it as you turn it. It often rips really easily, but that's okay. You can just apply it right on top of the floral tape that you've just applied. It takes a bit of time to get used to it and to learn how to work with it, so don't feel too frustrated. But you can see how it's starting to keep this together really nicely. And it's actually kind of sticky too. Okay, that's enough for now. I'll add more later. But once I have the floral tape on, I'll go ahead and go back and just adjust. Some things can shift and make sure that it looks exactly what I'm looking for. And then I'll add the green leaves. So for these green leaves, for the most part, I want them to be back behind the bouquet to cover up some of this wiring. There might be a place or two that I want to slide a leaf into. I think that I'd like one right into here, so I'll slide that through the bouquet. You can also adjust your flowers. You can slide them in and out a little bit. If you see one that's maybe out too far, you can slide it back in deeper, or vice versa. I'm going to fill in some of these gaps in the back, adding some leaves. And once I have those in place, I'll add some more floral tape. So on a handheld bouquet, you want to think about how long you need the handle. So one thing I do know is this stem is too long. So I'll pull out my heavy-duty wire cutters. That will give me more than one cut at a time. I'll pull these out a bit and then just cut these down. And to cover up all these raw edges, I'm going to add some more floral tape. This is where I'll bend my handle down so it makes it easier to hold, and then we will cover up the stem with this ribbon. I have this beautiful silk ribbon here. I think I'll leave about a foot and a half, and I'll place it right at the base of the flowers. Hold that with one hand and then wrap the stem with the other. Once I get to the bottom, I'll just wrap it really tightly and then just go back up the stem. It helps to trim the ribbon so that you don't keep twisting. So I have both ends of ribbon. I'll place this one on this side, bring the first ribbon up over the top, and then loop it back through the second ribbon to tie my knot. And this will give me a nice straight knot. Sometimes this might take two people to do. Then you can tie a bow so that it looks something like this. You can use this technique to make a bridal bouquet or a similar one to make a tabletop arrangement. And when you do and take pictures, make sure you tag us at #MadeWithLeah and click the button below so that you can be here for the next craft school video.